All right, I know a lot of people are pissed right now about Venom having MJ as his host, but the question is, why? Why Al Ewing? Why? So that's what we're gonna be finding out here in this issue here of All New Venom with issue number 6. Now, when we first start off, we see the words here being narrated, by the way, by MJ, and she says this: it all started during the Venom War. Then we get this picture here of the symbiote sludge that's around her right now. And she begins to recap the story and what happened. She says, the big bad guy, some crazy version of Eddie Brock from the future, of course here she's talking about Meridius, woke up this ancient mega symbiote, the Arachneode. I was out there fighting it as Jackpot, and I was losing badly. And I knew one thing: it was all Venom's fault. So Venom is like, yo, that's not fair. To which she replies, she's like, oh really? Who was it who glooped his goop all over my Jackpot device? Which is kind of unfair, as Venom calls out. He's like, you were the one who didn't want your superpower slot machine to be so random anymore and so limited. You ordered Spider-Man and me to make it work better. So we did. You see how people can be ungrateful, guys? But Venom continues, and it's like, and instead of a random useless power from a random useless machine, you suddenly had something that worked just like you asked for. And you're welcome, by the way. But in this moment here, this is when we see Paul and Robbie sitting right next to each other. But Paul, this dude has one question that he needs to ask right now. And it's, why are you two sitting like that? And we see Venom, I'm sorry, this made me laugh so hard because Venom is there, stomach and gut all open, and then he has his arm draped over MJ's shoulder. Like, what is going on here? But then this is when MJ lets him know. He's like, we have to maintain contact, that's all. Usually I'm rearing the symbiote, or he's in my bloodstream. If you ask me, guys, it sounds like they're getting very intimate here, but let's continue. She says, it's not like we're friends. And Venom continues, we're not friends, Paul, but we do have to stay together, or, and then MJ continues, or we'll die, which is a whole other story within itself. But Robbie, he's like, all right, we'll finish that later. But what about this part of it? The eyewitnesses said that the Arachneal rampage saw you and Spider-Man blow it up from the inside, to which MJ mentions how Peter jumped right on in, dove into the belly of the beast, just to give her moral support, she says. And as she continues on, she's like, I guess two minds are harder to eat than one. Working together, we got the Jackpot device back under control, and the rest is front page news. But as Paul reflects back on his time, he was like, yeah, that's what the world saw. What I saw in the readings. What I was getting from the device is that I thought that you were dying, MJ. I thought you were being turned inside out right there on the screen. And he mentions how relieved he was when she came home and asks if she remembered, which of course she does. But in the midst of that, she remembers saying to herself, I remember feeling terrible and selfish and like such a bad person, because while he felt sadness, she didn't feel that at all. She mentions how she had fought for her life and she had won. She was buzzing. It was an escape from grief. When I saw how it hit you, watching that screen, feeling so helpless, I didn't want to do that to you again. I couldn't do that to you again. So it was a bad time for the Jackpot device to really start futzing out. To which he mentions, he was like, right, that was when I started losing contact with you. I said you needed the day off after all that, but well, you said it yourself. You were buzzing. So this is where we see MJ here going out on a prowl. I guess a criminal patrol prowl. And it was during that time where Paul was mentioning how they were starting to get some weird, or he was starting to get some weird spikes on his end. And he was trying to tell her to keep the patrol short. But MJ, she didn't want to. She thought even something as simple as a car alarm meant that, hey, she got to go take care of it. But while she's on this patrol, the device starts to trigger. We got one skull, we got one cherry, and then we got what looks like a symbiote symbol or an arachneal all over again. And in that moment, she literally turns into a blob of goop. Is that how you say it? Gloob? Whatever. Y'all get the point. Y'all see it. What she calls it was a skull cherry venom. And that damn near knocked her out of the sky. And she thinks it's Paul that's doing something funny with it, but it isn't. And then the Jackpot rolls again. 7 Venom horseshoe. And it's in that moment when it turned her into a super soldier. But it was a Kree super soldier. So her thought was, listen, I gotta get this device off of me. But the thing wasn't coming off. It was bonded to her and it would not let go. And of course, she had to make a little sly remark in this moment, just like a symbiote, as she looks over to Venom and is like, hey, you wanna jump in and tell the rest of the story? So Venom's like, all right, fine. MJ's right, Paul. You should blame me for this. Paul, your glyph technology, it's science with a little magic mixed in. The link I made with it was science and magic too, a deeper bond than we knew, which wouldn't have been such a problem if I wasn't shot up with K-chemical anti-symbiote poison plus a dose of time travel reverse carnage goop. And this is where we see what pretty much basically happened to Venom after the Venom War. Here, he had crawled into a sewer to die because the way that he sees it, he's like, all I've ever done with my life was hurt people. But then he says, and my life wasn't over yet. But then here, in comes stumbling MJ into that sewer as well. And you can see the face she got on, like, oh, she don't look too good. It's almost like her skin is peeling off of her. And he looks up like, Mary Jane? And she says, get up, you monster. I should have known you couldn't be trusted. All this was your plan, wasn't it? You're just messing with me to get at Peter again, aren't you? Aren't you? To which, as Venom recalls, he's like, you know, that was a little hurtful. But then she's like, you're telling me I'd roll 2 skulls and a Venom. My skin had a life of its own. I was in crazy sheer pain. As if to say, you know, give me a break. So Robbie, seeing or hearing all this, is like, okay, well, you didn't think of coming home? So MJ's like, yeah, the sliver of Venom in the jackpot device wanted to join the rest. It was pulling me like a compass needle when it wasn't spinning its wheels. All right, real quick, if you want to support the channel here and get early access, behind the scenes stuff, or just help Keepin' It Comic here to keep going, you can join the Keepin' It Comic fam right here on YouTube with our membership group by hitting that join button on this video. Or you can also join our Patreon membership group as well. The link for that will be down below in the description. It means a lot to us and it helps us to continue to keep bringing you these breakdowns every single week. We appreciate you. Now let's get back into it. Skull, Venom, Skull. Different order, but the same basic combination. This time, my bones rebelled, as we see Venom still calling out to her, Mary Jane! And she continues on to mention, she's like, through the agony, I knew I was running out of chances. That was always the big risk of the jackpot device, that I'd get the bad roll. 3 skulls in a row, instant death. So Robbie's sitting here looking at Paul like, bro, like, you built this for her? And Paul, by the way, in a gaming chair, I might add, is like, man, don't. I know it was a mistake, like everything else I've ever done, like my whole life. But the limiter was supposed to ensure a triple roll would never happen. So MJ chimes in, she's like, Paul's right, Robbie. With that limiter on, being jackpot was safer than driving a car. Superheroics with a seatbelt on. But then I asked Venom to take the safeties off. And after that, it was always just a matter of time. So I'm sitting here looking at this like, so you're saying it's really your fault, MJ? I'm just saying, that's all I'm hearing, y'all. But then she continues on. She's like, ever been unmade? Imagine every molecule in your body screaming to get away from the other one. For 1 second, I felt more pain than I've ever felt in my whole life. And I knew that was the rest of my life that 1 second. I was disintegrating, alive, deep down in that lonely sewer, far from the sun. And so was Venom. And my last thought in that last second was that at least the horrible alien that did this to me would die too. Listen, man, the gaslighting that's going on here. But then let's move on. Let's continue, y'all. So Venom is like, ouch. And she does admit, she's like, okay, it wasn't my finest hour, but she does give Venom some kudos. She's like, but it might have been yours though. Because in this moment, Venom takes a page here out of his old pal's book, Peter Parker. And he said to himself, what would Spider-Man do? And he mentions how he would try. If there was the smallest chance of the slightest shred of the tiniest sliver of hope, like Peter would try. And if there was no hope at all, he'd still try the same. So I did the only thing that I knew to do. My purest instinct as a symbiote. I initiated a bond. I became the bond holding her together, the glue keeping her in one piece. Now I'm that for her. and she is that for me. We're not just bonded, we're fused on the molecular level. We are Venom and we are Mary Jane Watson. So we continue on here because when MJ got home, I mean, she was completely done and she just passed out on the couch, drooling and everything. Look at that. And Paul remembers, he's like, listen, I came in looking for you for hours. Dude almost called the Avengers. And dude's kind of like, yo, you're just sitting here napping on the couch? And she's like, yo, don't shout, Paul. Like she just had a hangover, which I guess to a certain extent she kind of did. So here MJ kind of is not really going to be as forthright, right, with information as we already know. But she tells Paul, she's like, yeah, the last patrol took a lot out of me. We should probably talk about what's going on. But then she pauses for a little bit because Venom on the inside is like, so that's the famous Paul? Are you going to introduce us? But before we can even continue on with that interaction, we jump back to the present time. And Paul's like, hold on for a second. So this is the reason why we haven't been intimate lately? And you can see the look here on Robbie's face. He's like, you know what, man, I'm gonna just sip my tea, my coffee, and just look over to the side. To which MJ admits, she's like, yeah, there's too many people in the room right now. But then MJ continues, she's like, I was gonna tell you, Paul, I was just exhausted and it wasn't the right time. So I gave it a day and then I gave it another. And then you know how that goes, another, then another. And then she realizes that suddenly she was kind of way too deep into a lie, especially considering that she was out here testing out these new powers. One of them apparently, which was hammer hands that looked like Thor's hammer. But the thing is that Paul was kind of realizing that something was off because he was still not getting a signal here from her device. It was reading like it was already broken. And according to his notes, that combo that pulled up the hammers should have actually been an energy blast. But instead, all that was happening here is that they were just rolling physical items. So she continues on with the lie. She's like, maybe it's because of the luck of the draw. While Venom is like, really? Fine, I can keep it secret. He's not my boyfriend. But then this is when he tells MJ, but in order for this to work, I want something in return. And that is the reason why Dylan was brought in. The one thing that he wanted MJ to do was to get in contact with Flash Thompson to make sure that Dylan wasn't being tortured somewhere and that Dylan was all set, which ultimately is the reason why they essentially adopted Dylan into their home. So now with Paul being hurt as MJ tries to tell him, oh, I'm sorry, Paul. Paul's like, all right, so Mr. Robbie Robertson, what are you gonna do now? You gonna publish this big scoop? Well, Robbie's like, no, that's not really what I'm here for. I've known Mary Jane for some time. I've also known Venom for some time too as well. I've seen Venom act like a vigilante, a villain, an agent of the state, a desperate fugitive. But I don't believe I've ever seen Venom act like a traditional superhero. That's new to me. And the honest truth is, when I look at Venom now, live in person and not 6 feet away from me, I don't feel afraid of him at all. Not one little bit. So the way that he sees is just like, why? Why would I ruin a good thing? And he's like, you know, maybe later on, I'll write a best-selling book about what I've seen. But until then, y'all's secret is safe with me. But I do have to say though, listen, Luke Cage and, you know, Rick Jones is probably going to try to follow up and find out what's going on here, right? So that's still a little bit of a loophole that hasn't been closed yet, but that's not going to be closed today. Instead, what happens here is that some little brat, Dylan, comes home. And of course, just in time for Venom to crawl back inside of MJ. Sorry, y'all, I couldn't find a better way to say it. And of course, Dylan can't help himself but call somebody else a dork, which is a perfect time for Robbie to be like, listen, I'm out of here. But then before Paul goes off to make dinner, he says one thing while looking. He's talking to Dylan, but he's looking at MJ. He's like, I don't think I could stay in a relationship with 3 people in it, even if the other were open and honest. And then my man just walks away. Then in the aftermath of that, MJ, she starts to get a phone call. And who's on the other line? Well, Flash Thompson. And he mentions, he's like, listen, Scar put some extra conditions on the agreement that we made about Dylan. And according to some information I just gathered, that might create a problem for us. So MJ wants to know, she's like, do we need to meet somewhere and talk? To which he responds back and says, not talk, no, I think we need to fight. Now, in the aftermath here of what happened back in issue number 5, where AIM or Scar told Flash, he's like, listen, your time is up. You got to go find Venom. So essentially what this is supposed to set up here is this whole Venom versus Flash thing. But listen, the real question here is, how do you feel about MJ being the host and the reason why she's the host? I'm not personally angry about it. I am a little bit disappointed, right? Because of course they manufactured this to go this way. And it's clear that they've kind of drew a line in the sand here, being that now MJ has to be bonded with Venom, has to be fused with Venom. Like, think about that for a second, right? Eddie Brock has never bonded with the Venom symbiote on a molecular level in the same way that Mary Jane Watson has here. So this does feel kind of a little bit dirty, doesn't it? Now I get it, it's because Venom himself needed to be able to fuse to stay alive. But it's like, how long are they gonna continue this going? Listen, I would love to hear your thoughts down below here in the comments. Also, leave a like on this video here for the YouTube algorithm if you haven't done so already. Subscribe if you're brand new to the channel. Check out our links that are down below in the description here, one where you can join our Discord. You can also follow us on social media. You can also, by the way, cop our new merch. We just added some new merch here to our merch store, so definitely go check that out as well. I appreciate you watching, and as always, thank you so much for kicking it with Keepin' It Comic. Bye!